What's going on, Celtics fans? How you doing? How you feeling? I think everybody's gonna be in probably the best mood physically possible right now. As usual, I'm your boy Adam Taylor, joined by my homie, my compadre, my co-host in crime, Mr. Will Weir, and don't forget my other homie, my other compadre, my other co-host in crime, Mr. Greg Manakis. We're the three-man weave, and we are hyped. What's going on, y'all?
Yo, I'm so excited right now. I can't believe I'm really worried because I know that we have to keep this family friendly, but like how can you not just like let the expletives fly after a game 7 win like that in the Boston Garden? I'm not saying TD Garden, in the Boston Garden. Grant Williams going bananas. What a win, what a series. Will, how you feeling?
Grant Williams, aka Steph Curry, Cash Money Grant. Woo! I mean, here's the thing. We've talked about this a lot, over, on Twitter and in other different mediums about, it being the 5-year anniversary of the Kelly Olynyk Game 7, also Eastern Conference semifinals. And we're like, man, are we going to get another performance like that today? Grant doesn't disappoint. Grant wanted to honor the Kelly Olynyk tradition that exists in the second round with the Boston Celtics. And we're moving on. That's the end of the day. Grueling series. Moving on. Pumped to be here right now.
I mean, we have to start with Grant, man. Like, look, I want to spend, I don't want to spend too much time on this series, but I think we have to, man. This was a slobber knocker. I don't think there's another way to say it. It was a slobber knocker. Game 1 through game 7. The Celtics are the only team in this series to win 2 games straight. Just let that sink in. That in itself is an achievement. I don't even know what to say, man. I'm like, for anybody like listening on the podcast on Monday morning, we're recording this live straight after the game. We're going to be taking some viewer comments when people come in and comment. Like, we are hyped up. Grant Williams with his own Kelly Olynyk game, playing just this wild role, telling everybody, yo, I want that extension right now. Boston moving on to Miami. Tatum, without Tatum down the stretch in the third through foul trouble, this team just found a way to win, man. And let's be fair, at halftime, as an Englishman would say, I'll try and Americanize that. I weren't feeling too confident, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But the big thing that switched that momentum though is that Marcus Smart like redemption 3-point foul shot at half court with 0.9 seconds left. To get the redemption from what was it, game 3? Was that game 3?
Game 3 was at the end, yeah.
Yeah, game 3 where we didn't get that call. And for him to get the call on Giannis at half court, get those 3 shots, that felt like things were starting to shift. We've been talking about the energy shifting all year since the Jaylen Brown quote, since the Jaylen tweet. And that was when I was like, okay, you know what? If that call is going to go our way in this game, then it feels like Celtics fans can breathe a little bit easier going into halftime, because that put us up 5, 48-43 going into halftime. And it was a little nerve-wracking when JT got that 4th foul with 7 minutes and 44 seconds left in the third quarter. But as I said on the playback room that we just came from, in the net series, the game where Tatum fouled out, the team learned how to play without him, and they did the same thing in that 7 minutes and 44 seconds, because we were up 10 when he went out, and when he came back in, we were up 15. So the guys really stepped up. We trusted each other. We moved the ball. Nobody played hero ball, though we took a couple bad shots, but that's typical NBA offense, NBA games. And I was really proud of the guys. I think they all picked each other up. And as Adam said, the Grant extension is real. I don't know if the Zach Lowe talk of 20 million to 25 million is going to be the number, but I'm willing to entertain any number for Grant Williams right now. What a game for that guy.
If I'm Grant Williams' agent, I'm on the phone right now. Right now is the most leverage you're ever going to have in negotiations. I don't think you can even sign a deal right now, but right now I would be making sure that I'm imprinting in Brad Stevens' mind that you remember today. You remember the day that Grant Williams showed up at the TD Garden and knocked down all those threes.
Do it in a Boston accent, TD Garden.
Came to the TD Garden and knocked down all those threes in your eye. You all said I couldn't do it, and I did it.
Bro, you don't think Grant Williams deserves $20 million? You don't think he deserves $20 million? Get out of here.
Max. Give him the
max, kid. Give him the max. Let him move into a house in Dorchester. It doesn't matter like where we live, like Seaport, Beacon Hill, doesn't matter. 20 million plus whatever place he wants. Give him the Matt Damon apartment from The Departed overlooking the State House. It doesn't exist. It's not a real apartment. But give it to him, man.
Grant Williams, king of Boston right now.
Oh man, that just made this episode for me, dude. I'm not even joking. Yeah, so I want to touch on like the way the offense was in the first half versus the way it was in the second, right? So it's very, I mean, we were all on playback, we were watching it live, you know, we had people tuned in, and one of the things that all three of us kind of had an issue with to start the game was it was very one possession offense, right? It was bring the ball up, shoot a free, maybe penetrate once, reset, then shoot the free. Come the second half of the game, you're seeing multiple penetration actions, multiple kicks. People aren't settling. They're finding the open man. For some reason, Milwaukee were just like, we're going to let Grant Williams go off. And then when Grant Williams started to get hot, they were like, well, we're already here. We might as well just carry on with what we're doing. So it was like night and day in terms of like, I felt like they had, I mean, does it feel like the Celtics played a little bit of rope-a-dope?
I'm not sure if I would call it rope-a-dope, because at one point, you know, it was the Celtics were, well, Grant in particular was 2 for 7 from 3, right? And that was the point in which we were all just like, oh, is he shooting too many threes right now? Because they're definitely like goading him into taking those 3-pointers. And then he hit his 8th one. Then he's 3 for 8, right? And you're like, okay, that's 37.5%. That's pretty money. If Grant Williams is going to hit 37.5% of his threes in this game, then we're in good shape. I don't know what he ended up. Was he 7 for 18?
38.9%. So he did not hit 37%. He hit 38.9%.
38.9%, you know? And I don't know if I would call it rope-a-dope, Adam, but it definitely seemed like in the first quarter, we were kind of feeling things out and we were saying, okay, they're going to give us these 3-pointers. Let's see if we're hot. You know, and that's kind of what it felt like the guys were doing. And Tatum was hot, right? Tatum was 4 for 4, I believe, in the first quarter, maybe the first half. I'm confused at this point. But I think with Jalen coming out and looking good, Derek White was 0 for 4 in the first half. Grant was 3 for 8, or if they were 3 for 9, whatever it ended up being in that first half. The Celtics eventually started hitting those shots. And this was also a big game for our guy, Peyton Pritchard, who, you know, as I was saying in the playback room, I had a feeling that it was going to be a Peyton Pritchard game. And he really delivered in that fourth quarter. I'm just happy for the guys, man. So, Adam, can you just like elaborate a little bit more as to why you were calling it a rope-a-dope performance?
Yeah, I mean, I generally don't feel like it wasn't something I was considering at the time. But thinking back, I'm like, man, you guys are playing some stagnant offense. You're letting Milwaukee settle into their defensive schemes. They feel like they're getting everything they want, and then all of a sudden you start mismatch hunting again. You start driving and kicking, and you take guys by surprise because you've been playing a certain way for the first like 25 minutes of the game, and then all of a sudden the entire offensive approach just switches up. There's more movement, there's more screening actions, there's more off-ball cuts. And all of a sudden, the defense is like, we've been so settled in the way we've defended you for the first half of the game. And now all of a sudden, everything's different. Guys you start forcing guys who are poor lateral movers to be able to start moving laterally. Like, you know, when did you see Brook Lopez get pulled onto the perimeter in the first half of the game? It didn't happen. Second half of the game, they're going at Brook, they're going at Portis. You know, Brook Lopez first half of the game was dominating at times. I was concerned. I think we all said that during the playback too. We were concerned. Second half of the game is a non-factor because all of a sudden they've just changed up. The defense hunkered down. I mean, well, we were saying this just before playback closed down. You kind of brought it up. You know, less than 40 points in the second half for Milwaukee. Like, come on, that's a defensive lockdown, man. That's a clinic. These dudes like just played possum for a little while, and then all of a sudden it all got ratcheted up. Now, let's be honest, it may probably like really tore into them at halftime, and that's what lit that fire. But you know, I want to say rope-a-dope. It sounds better.
Yeah, but I mean, I think really it was, you know, whether it was the nerves of Game 7 or, you know, just sometimes it's not even nerves, sometimes it's being too amped up. And I think we let the Bucks dictate our offensive flow a little bit early on. And even though we were getting open looks, it wasn't the way. And I think you had mentioned this, Adam. It wasn't the way that we wanted to get the open looks. It wasn't off of movement. It wasn't off of paint touches. And I think you started to see that shift throughout the game. And then, you know, when we hit that halftime, Greg already brought up, you know, that big Marcus Smart 3 that we got to go from 2 to 5. And then you think about that first 2-minute stretch in the second half when the game started. And I think, Adam, you were still coming back to the playback room, so you might have missed this part. But the Celtics go on an 11-2 run to start the half. They have 3 threes that go in from Grant, Jalen, and Tatum. And then JB also adds in a 2-point field goal from that. That really set the tone and created the separation when you combo in that extra 3 points that you got from Marcus Smart. So you get those extra 3 points, you go from 2 to 5, then you go on an 11-2 run. And after that, and this is something that we've all talked about a bunch of times, like this Celtics defense is so good that when they get a lead, it's hard to claw back. Like, it's hard to go on these elongated runs to make up those gaps. So when the Celtics gave themselves that little bit of distance, the pressure then from what should have been a 2-point game at halftime really quickly in a just over 2-minute span became a really tough uphill battle for the Bucks to climb back through. And just like I've been saying all series for this, you're going to feel that absence of Chris Middleton. They didn't have a second guy to score. You said Brook Lopez in the first half, had it going a little bit. Drew Holiday never got it going really in this game. And so Giannis, he just ran out of steam. You think about the load that Giannis has carried. He was amazing in the series. I can't overstate how amazing that he was throughout this entire series. And the fact that this is a bad game. Like, this was a bad game for Giannis, and he was 25, 20, and 9, but he shot 10 to 26. So that's a credit to the Celtics defense, but also, highlights the fact that once they got that gap, once they got that lead early on in the second half, it was going to become near impossible for the Bucks to make that up. And especially when the difference from 3-point is, what did it end up being? 22-4. You got no chance.
That's wild. 22-4.
That's insane, right?
What's the math on that? That's like some 50
plus 18
points.
Oh, you're talking about the
54 points. That's 54 points. That's crazy. You don't need to do the math. Will, I got it. 54 points. Yep, I got it.
Just double check. We're thorough here.
Calculator up here. No, but second quarter. So Bucks win the first quarter 26-20. Celtics win 28-17, 31-21, 30-17. So that Middleton absence, as you said, going throughout the entire series, that's huge. But even throughout this game, there was just less and less options for the Bucks, and it seemed like the only option they had was for Giannis to reach into Avatar mode, and he was unable to do that. It was like after. Do you guys watch Avatar? Do you get that reference when Aang gets
I know what the show is. I've never seen.
Okay, there's one.
We're not talking about the movie.
No, I'm talking about there is a movie like Avatar Last Airbender, but the TV show.
Oh, we're talking about Airbender now. I don't know that one.
Okay. I forget the reference then, but it was a good reference. For
okay.
Everyone out there that knows Avatar Last Airbender, when Aang gets hit in the back by Zuko's sister, then he just loses all of his powers and he has a real hard time getting back into Avatar mode. But it felt like that's what happened to Giannis today. I don't know exactly when it was where he lost that Avatar state, but he didn't have it in the fourth quarter, especially. I mean, we were talking about it during playback. He missed 4 layups, point blank at the rim, inches from the rim. He just didn't have it, man. And then the Celtics also played without fouling tonight. Giannis only shot 6 free throws. After getting to the line, however many times he got, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it seemed like he was living at the free throw line, especially in that last game where he took damn near 20 free throws. 4 for 6 from the line tonight. He didn't quite have the juice that he's had all series. And then Grayson Allen still played 22 minutes, 0 for 6, 0 for 4. Wes Matthews, we were talking about early in the series, Will, you and I, if Wes Matthews is going to beat us, that just doesn't feel like a thing that should happen in the year 2022. You know what I mean? In the year of Jason Tatum, that should not happen. And it didn't. After those first couple games, Wes Matthews became a non-factor, and then Tatum ended up being Tatum.
I mean, the other thing is as well, and I don't know if you agree with this, whether or not you agree with that they performed well together, but this was one of those games for me where Jalen and Jason got it going at the same time. They were playing off of each other instead of with each other, which is something we spoke about extensively on this show previously. So for me, I'm just like, when those two guys are playing at a high level at the same time, there's not a team in the league that scares me. And as we said, as we were closing out that other room we were doing, it was very much you've beat Durant, you've beat Giannis, now you go on to beat Jimmy Butler. That's what's up next, right? Now you've got Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, 6th man of the year, Tyler Hero, and probably no Kyle Lowry because he's barely been available in the postseason. And then you move on. So I think that by doing what they've done in the first 2 series, now don't get me wrong, Game 7 could have gone either way. It genuinely could have. Both teams deserve their flowers because it was a slugfest. But now I'm kind of like, if this is the Jalen and Jason we're getting, and they can do this consistently at the same time, I'm not that concerned now about Miami. I feel like Milwaukee was a tougher task than what Miami. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Miami's going to be easy, but I think Milwaukee was the tougher task.
So I agree with you, Adam, in the sense that, and I felt, and here's where I'm a little tentative because I feel like I probably felt similarly when we got to the bubble, even though you're looking at a younger Celtic team at that time. is that the Celtics should be favored, I think. And I think the Celtics, I expect them to win the series. But you think back to, and we've referenced this before, I believe it was when Jason Tatum was on Old Man 3 with JJ Redick. He talked about how difficult that Toronto series was in the bubble and how much it took out of them just to get through that round. As you just laid out, this has been a vicious series. This has been a slobber knocker, is what I think Adam called it earlier. Like, this has been two gargantuans throwing haymakers. And listen, we swept the Nets, but those were close games. Those were all very close games, very physical games. Like, this has not been, an easy, first two rounds for the Celtics to get by. Obviously, the health of Rob Williams will play a role. And, I agree that I think the Bucks were probably the tougher test. Certainly if they had Middleton, they would have been. But, I think the Heat had a little bit of an easier first two rounds. They get a couple extra days to rest. Like, I do think that that's going to play a role. Kyle Lowry or not. And Jimmy Butler is one of those guys that just shows up in the moment, right? He shows up in the moment. Bam has always been a guy that kind of gives us problems. And I think Tyler Hero will be a big X factor. He was huge in that series in the bubble. We'll see what Tyler Hero shows up. It's been kind of hit or miss some of these games, but I'm a little hesitant to go ahead and write off the Heat. Not even saying that you are, Adam, but because I do feel that I would, once again, I'm going to pick the Celtics to win this series. I don't know, how long it's going to take, but I'm going to pick the Celtics. But I don't want to underestimate what this Heat team brings to the table.
Yeah, the Heat are a little scary, man. Did you guys watch much of the Heat Sixers series? I know the Sixers were a shell of themselves with Embiid being out and Harden just like not being an NBA player anymore. What were your thoughts on watching the Heat versus the Sixers? Because when I was watching that series, I saw a team that I think actually offers a little bit more depth, right, than the Bucks do. The Bucks pretty much had Giannis, Holiday, and then nobody, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Heat are 10 deep.
For sure. Yeah. They're 10 deep, and they've got shooters that can really spread the Celtics floor, the Celtics defense out. Max Strus, old friend Max Strus, is now like starting for them and really making an impact, even on the defensive end. He's a strong defender, as we saw in that game in which the Celtics, lost to them down the stretch where Tatum had that big offensive foul on Strus, very similar to the Grayson Allen play, actually, that happened tonight. And I'm just a little bit more concerned about the Heat, honestly, than I was about the Bucks. Giannis is the big bad in the Eastern Conference and in the league, but Jimmy Butler is a heck of a problem for this team. Bam Adebayo, Jason Tatum is going to have to get over that moment at the rim that happened in the bubble, because Will and I have talked about this. We still feel like he's got some like PTSD from getting blocked at the rim in that moment. And then they've got other guys that can really make a difference on the floor. PJ Tucker, I think, was a great addition for them. The Martin kid off the bench for them is really important. If Kyle Lowry comes back, he's always a thorn in the side of the Celtics. So they've got some guys to be worried about. Duncan Robinson is kind of fallen out of favor there with Spoelstra. Hero, he does make a difference against other teams, but against the Celtics, I feel like we're going to be able to contain him, especially with the addition of Derek White and other guys that can kind of like counter punch what he brings off the bench. And I think we can really attack them. But in general, I think the Heat offer some depth that the Bucks did not have, and I think that could be the Celtics' kryptonite.
So you see, what I've got the wall. Okay, so Miami doesn't have someone as dominant as KD or Durant, right? And I think that's a big plus. With the depth, I think that's what the Celtics have been built to counter this year, because the Celtics have depth too. But the Celtics are like 8 deep instead of 10, right? But
depending on Rob's health too, which he was available today, but obviously didn't play. So I think that is a slight indication that he's not fully back to health yet.
And I think that when this team has been built and constructed by Brad throughout the season, I genuinely believe he's had an eye on Miami throughout, and I think that the way this team is built now is very much to be able to grind out a series against another team with incredible depth. Now, don't get me wrong, Duncan Robinson's not really seeing minutes at the moment, but Strus is. They've still got that scoring ability coming off the bench there. Hero can get buckets, or Hero, however I want to pronounce it, can get buckets off the dribble. He can get it off the drive, off the catch. He's super versatile too. But what we've seen in this series is okay, so Milwaukee didn't have great offensive pieces, but they had guys that could get hot. Grayson Allen had games where he could get hot, not consistently, obviously. But what I'm trying to get at is without a dominant factor in this series. Jimmy Butler's great. Jimmy Butler's been playing phenomenal basketball this postseason, but he's not a Giannis or a KD. And I don't fear the Heat as much, in the simple fact is that they don't have that transcendent guy. You know what I'm saying? Where Boston do. Boston have Tatum. And that's no disrespect to Miami. I still think Miami's probably another 7-game series. I genuinely think that goes down to the wire again, 6 or 7. But the depth that everybody's concerned about with Miami, I think that Boston has enough to match that, especially if it's 8 deep.
Yeah, my biggest thing with Miami, and like I said, I think, we've talked a lot about what these last 2 series have meant for Jason Tatum in the hierarchy of the NBA, and clearly he's ascending into that, top 5, fringe category, whatever it is. Tatum's right there. He's there amongst the top of the top. Jimmy Butler has a way of putting himself in moments. He doesn't do it necessarily with the consistency across the season that some of these that guys like Tatum starting to do, Giannis, Kevin Durant do. But Butler steps up in those moments, and you look at his postseason stats right now, very similar to what we've been getting out of Jason Tatum. Both are right at 28.8 points per game. Both are averaging, Jimmy's actually out-rebounding Tatum right now, and the assists are basically even. So he does have the ability to match up, but I think for me, what it's going to come down to, though, is I'm very suspect about Miami's end of game offense. I feel like and I like Tyler Hero, but I feel like there's a lot of Tyler Hero that needs to be involved for it to be run at its peak. And that's where I start to get, questioning of like, okay, how are we going to lose a series to a team that's relying on Tyler Hero when we rely on Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum? And that feels like it should be a differentiator. And like I said, I know Butler can step up and Bam's a great facilitator, but if you've watched some of the Miami Heat closing games, Tyler Hero has to be involved offensively, but he can also be exploited defensively. And I think at times when it gets to, crunch time, I feel like the Celtics are going to have more opportunities to exploit, whether it's mismatches or holes within the Heat. But that said, I'm with you, Adam. I think this is going 6 or 7, and I think it's going to be another grueling series.
Yeah, and to Will's point that he was making earlier in terms of the physicality that this series had and the toll that it took on us, and he compared it to the Celtics coming off that Raptors series, right, where we had to go 7 with the Raptors and we ran out of gas against the Heat. Very similar in this situation. The Celtics are going every other day from here on out. It's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, the 17th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 23rd, 25th, 27th, 29th. They're not going to get another 2 days off, maybe until they reach the finals, which I would expect there would be a couple of days off in between the conference finals and the finals. So it's going to be an absolute grind. To Will's other point that he was just making about Tyler Hero, just watching the way that the Heat functioned in the playoffs, as I watched a good amount of the Heat during the regular season, they definitely relied less on Hero in the playoffs than they had in the regular season. Mm-hmm. I think that's because Jimmy Butler has decided to take his game to another level. Even the aggressiveness that he's shown shooting the ball from 3 in the regular season, he was barely shooting the ball from 3. He's been far more aggressive shooting it. The numbers are reflecting that as well. And I think the eye test will tell you that Jimmy Butler, although he's not Kevin Durant, although he's not Giannis, he did just lead a team to the finals 2 years ago, and he was transcendent in that finals. Jimmy Butler wasn't the issue in the finals against the Lakers. It was Dragic had gotten hurt and Bam had gotten hurt, right? So it was just Jimmy. And now Jimmy's got some guys riding with him. And, I'm hesitant to say that the Celtics should be overwhelming favorites in this series, although I do feel great about it. I felt great about it going into the bubble. I thought we were going to smoke them in the bubble, and we didn't. So I'm a little bit concerned because of, all of the analogs that we're being able to draw between these 2 series from the bubble and the series that's upcoming. But as much as, that series felt like a learning curve for the Celtics in last season against the Nets, and then this season against the Nets, and how we were able to completely flip the script on that, you would expect that the Celtics, 2 more years of maturity, can really handle business against the Heat. Jason Tatum just beat Kevin Durant. He just beat Giannis. We're expecting him to continue to catapult himself into the upper echelon conversation of the NBA. And I think this is his year, man. I really do. And I expect the Celtics to beat the Heat.
Let me ask you guys a quick question here. So touched on it briefly that Rob was active today, didn't play, and they kind of hinted at like it was going to be a real emergency case if Rob plays. And we saw early on in the series, even before that bone bruise, which I think took place. I don't know if it was game 2 or game 3 when that happened, but it was separate from the knee that he had surgery on. But we had seen that early on that this, Rob was certainly going to, he would have helped. He would not have hurt, but it was a series in which he wasn't at his full effectiveness, the way that Giannis was going to attack him. And in some ways, Grant and Al were just the better matchups when you look at kind of our big man rotation. Looking at what Miami brings to the table and where Bam is such a focal point of both their defense and offense, how important do we think it's going to be to get some version of Rob, knowing that he's probably not going to be the 100% Rob that we've seen in the regular season, but getting some form of whatever it is, 80-90% of Rob? How important do we think it is for this matchup compared to what we just witnessed?
Personally, I think it's going to be hugely important. I mean, first of all, when you're talking about guarding Jimmy and having somebody that's playing in a free role, like a free safety role there, considering Jimmy's very much a rim pressure and mid-range dude, he's not really going to try and hurt you from deep. Having a shot deterrent that can rotate over and start challenging those shots is going to be primary option number one. But I don't like the idea of putting Rob on Adebayo too much, because Adebayo does a lot of his offensive creation around that mid to high post. And if you're bringing Rob up that high in a man coverage, then you're taking away what's made him so exceptional this year, as having him on a weaker defender on the weak side and roaming over. I like Grant on that matchup more. I just think Grant gives you a little bit more on Bam. And then on offense, having Rob setting screens, slipping that verticality. I mean, I haven't watched a ton of Miami this year, so please, I'm asking this is a question now. Do they have anyone that can match Rob's athleticism? Like, is there anyone there that can literally jump with him to try and challenge him at the rim when he explodes?
No, they don't have anyone. I think Adebayo is the closest guy to that, but even Rob, I think Rob is another level of athlete. Bam's a better, perimeter defender. He's stronger than Rob is, but in terms of just verticality, Rob is going to be the most explosive vertical athlete in this series. And just real quick on your point about Butler, he averaged 2 3-pointers per game in the regular season. And in that last series, he averaged 4.7. 20% in the regular season, 32.5 in that last, it's not a great number, 32.5, but he's been far more aggressive shooting that three. Just reading out
though when Embiid's in the paint.
Yeah. And he went at Embiid though, man. I think Embiid, as great of a defender as he is, Butler is just one of those guys that I feel like people always underestimate how much he can use his body to play through people, and he played through Embiid many times in that series. And I'm always just a little bit hesitant to bet against Jimmy Butler because the guy just knows how to play basketball. He's super strong, and I think in the past he's been too much for Marcus Smart. He's been too much for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and hopefully they've gotten to the point now where they just look Kevin Durant in the eye, they look Giannis in the eye. Now they can look Jimmy Butler in the eye and be like, "Hey, it's our time. We got now. You had the past. We don't have next. We got now, and this is our moment."
So I think that's go ahead, Adam.
No, it's all right. Just before I forget this thought, and I'll let you go. The one thing I do want to point out is Embiid missed the first game or two with an orbital fracture. Wasn't at 100% for the entire series. Mm-hmm. I'm not taking anything away from what Miami did, but what I am saying is, to a lot of people are kind of crowning Miami conference champions. I've seen it on social media the last few days. Miami dealt with Embiid and Harden handily. Tyrese Maxey's there, Tobias Harris there. It's not like Philadelphia isn't stacked for talent, but their top 2 players, one just wasn't engaged and one was operating at 65%. I do feel and sometimes for me, I'm maybe you at least get to steal the first game because people start drinking that Kool-Aid. The same reason Milwaukee stole that first game against Boston after their Brooklyn series. Sometimes you just drink too much of that Kool-Aid. Sorry,
yeah. No, you're good. I think game 1 will be interesting because I think with the quick turnaround and Miami having been off since I think Thursday or so, they're going to be pretty rested. But also there's kind of that momentum factor. And we see this a little bit with the last couple of years with the play-in games, right? Where some teams they've got a little bit of a head start as to that playoff feel. and then they come in and they get game one. And so I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to happen in that game one. I think it will be very interesting to see how affected the Celtics are from this past series. But something I wanted to touch on that you said, Greg, and we've been talking about in this conversation. It is a little bit different where now Tatum and JB and all of the Celtics can look across the table at the Miami Heat and say, we just stared down Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. We just stared down the defending champions and MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo. When you think back to the bubble, that team was still kind of finding its footing, right? They beat the Raptors, who were technically defending champions, but no Kawhi Leonard. It's a different team. It's just a different feel, right? That's not the same level of what you just went up against. They beat the Sixers in that first round of the bubble. No Ben Simmons. They had Embiid. That was the Horford year where things just didn't feel and fit right. And, they didn't really have anything to kind of look back and say, we're that dude. We're that dudes, plural. And specifically Jason Tatum, I'm that guy. No one's telling me that I'm not top 5, top 10 anymore. Like, this is my league. Like, everyone wants to talk about, Giannis, Jokic, Embiid, rightfully so. Luka's coming. But what about Jason Tatum? This is Jason Tatum's conference now. Like, there's part of him that can look to that and say, I'm the big dog. Now, granted, Jimmy's not just going to give it to him. Jimmy's going to step up and say, I've been to the finals. You haven't. In fact, I beat you to go to the finals. And he's going to feel like he's the big dog. He always feels like he's, disrespected and underrated, and that's the chip that he plays with on his shoulder, and that's part of what makes him so great. But I do think that is a big difference for the Celtics coming into this, is that they feel like they've accomplished a bit more, especially with like the road environments that they've played in. The bubble doesn't give you that, and so I think there is a different level of confidence for this team going into this series versus Miami as compared to 2 years ago in the bubble.
Yeah, and this is going to test my theory, man. I always said that the Celtics would have won in the bubble against the Heat if we had either kept Grant Williams on the floor or if we had never let go of Al Horford in the first place.
Both of them will be there now.
And both of them are going to be there. And that was the thing that killed us, is that we had Tice playing those minutes against Bam, and Bam ended up just completely big boying him all down the stretch in that series. And the fact that Tice is now our fourth big man, and like we'll get spot minutes. I thought Tice was great, by the way, tonight. It was his best game in a while. I was really impressed with what he was able to offer for us. I think that the Celtics should win this series against the Heat, man. I'm just looking at their top 8 or 9 guys, right? So this was their starting lineup in the game 5 against the Sixers. They had PJ Tucker, Jimmy Butler, Adebayo, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, right? That's their starting 5. And then they got Martin, Dedmon, Hero, Oladipo, and Robinson. So they went 10 deep, but probably they're going to go 8 deep because that was a blowout game. So like Victor Oladipo, is this really going to be like his coming out party or return to glory series? Tyler Hero, we've already talked about him. Dwayne Dedmon, that's been a name that's been around for ages, but without Kyle Lowry being prime Kyle Lowry, which I don't think he's going to be in these playoffs. When I look at that roster, I just think we have the better roster. They might be like 1 or 2 guys more deep, but to Adam's point from earlier in the pod, like the Celtics are deep enough. We have 7 to 8 guys that we can put out there, especially if Rob can give us something in this next series. And like, I'm not scared of that lineup, man. Tucker, Butler, Adebayo, Vincent, and Strus. Like, if the Celtics can't come out victorious in that series, something went wrong.
And I mean, the only thing that's really concerning me right now is, and I've harped on about this since the bubble, man, because I was really impressed with the way Miami executed it and how much trouble it gave Boston, is that inverted 3-2 zone. So for anybody listening, anybody watching, the reason it's inverted is because instead of having your guards at the front of the zone guarding the perimeter, what Miami did in the bubble was they switched their wings and their bigs to the forefront, right? So your wings were guarding the perimeter along with the big man, and then your guards were down at the back, right? Guarding on the dunker spot, weak and strong side, and then kind of roaming out to the corners to deal with corner shooters. And what that did was it made penetrating off the dribble incredibly hard, especially even off ball. It was really difficult because you had big, strong, lengthy dudes just making it super difficult to get any form of interior actions going. And with the way the Celtics play this season, we saw that Milwaukee had the most success this series when they limited Boston's ability to get into the paint, because Boston's entire perimeter offense, that good offense at least, is generated from multiple driving kick actions. So if you're struggling to penetrate, then you're going to struggle to score if you're Boston. And I think that's what Milwaukee did really well in game 3, if I recall. So I think Spoelstra goes back to that early, probably game 1, game 2, just to see, obviously, different coach, different personnel. Everybody on this roster that was there when Miami done that in the bubble have vastly improved. But you're going to want to see, right? I mean, you had so much success with it. You're going to want to put it in place, even if it's just for a 4 or 5 minute stretch, just to test the water, see how everybody reacts, see what type of struggles you give them, if any. But if that is an issue and all of a sudden Boston can't break down this zone again, that's when I start to get concerned.
Yeah, I think the zone's going to play a major role. And I think we're all remembering back to, both the Raptors and the Heat in the bubble basically went to zones, and that's what kind of broke that team, was not being able to figure out those zones. And I think you bring up another great point, Adam, is Erik Spoelstra. Erik Spoelstra is an amazing coach. I think he's one of the top, easily 3 coaches in the league. I think a lot of people would even say he might be the best coach in the league. Yeah, exactly. I think that's, he's right there. And, as great as we've seen Ime be, and I think Ime has been really excellent this postseason, probably something that maybe we don't even talk about enough is how great he's been. He's still a rookie head coach, right? So you think of all the battles that Erik Spoelstra's been in, multiple NBA Finals appearance, multiple playoff runs, and we know that he's a guy that's not afraid to experiment on the fly. Like, there's gonna be a bit of call and response from these 2 coaches, and as much as I want to praise Ime for the job he just did in this round, Spo's a different level than Bud, right? Spo's a guy that's really going to test you for what's your counter moves, because I'm going to have multiple moves and I'm not going to be afraid. Like, Spo and Nick Nurse are 2 guys I look at in the NBA that their level of coaching, I'm expecting to see something we haven't even seen yet. You know what I mean? I'm expecting that they have something that's in their back pocket that they're almost waiting to whip out in the postseason, when it's like, now's the time for us to run whatever set it is, whatever play it is. Like you said, the inverted zone was something that I feel like we hadn't seen or weren't expecting. Definitely a zone approach, but maybe not that style of zone. And so I'm expecting some type of wild card that we're going to see from Erik Spoelstra, and I'm very excited to see what the response is going to be on the Celtics end.
Yeah, and that's a great point, man. I mean, if you look back at the 2 coaches that Ime just beat, he just beat Steve Nash, who's still a relatively new head coach, and hasn't actually gotten rave reviews of what he's done in Brooklyn. And then Bud, who everyone was calling for his head last year before they ended up winning the finals, because, what the players did. It wasn't necessarily what Bud did. It was just Giannis went to another level, Holiday found his groove, and Chris Middleton was there. Chris Middleton wasn't there this year, so it's going to be really interesting to see Ime and what he's able to do against a guy like Spo, who I think most people would agree is the best coach in the NBA at this point. Pop, I think, had that for quite some time, and he's still right up there with him. But Spo has been really impressive what he's been able to do with this Heat franchise since he took over way back when. I still remember Spo being, the video coordinator and being there watching a game in like 2005, and he was working out Dwayne Wade before the game, and I was like, "Who's this young guy running around?" And now they're like, he is the guy in the NBA. Yeah. When you think of like the best coaches, you think of Spo. And it's going to be great for Ime to be able to cut his teeth in the Eastern Conference Finals against Spo. And, hopefully that coaching disparity, which it seems like right now, even though Ime has been great, you would never say he's Spo's level. Hopefully it's not as wide of a gap as the Heat need it to be for them to be successful in this series.
So this has been on my mind since probably game 4 of this series. And it's nothing spectacular, but I'm going to say it anyway.
What a setup! What an undersell of a setup there.
Yeah, because like it's just so so many people are going to disagree, and it's just like it fit. Even I'm questioning whether I'm grasping at straws with this, But I'm like, it's late, dude. It's like midnight. Leave me be. I'm like, you have Tatum and Brown that both, like Tatum especially, that had postseason success as a rookie. And it really put them on a path towards what they're becoming now, right? And then you get this young coach that's all of a sudden having postseason success as a rookie that could put, and if he, if you get to the conference finals in your first year as a coach with a team that were a first round exit last year, that isn't really much different, like you're being put on a similar path towards that echelon, right? And I do agree. I don't think Ime has been tested from an X's and O standpoint all season. because regular season you're not really going to go deep into your playbook because you don't want to reveal everything that you've got. That's like going to a poker game and telling everyone what cards you drew in the first hand, or giving away your tells. You don't bluff too early. So I think that's definitely going to be a big factor, right? Like, how can Ime Udoka deal with the chess battle? Now, we know Brad Stevens could do that. I personally think Ime Udoka can handle that perfectly fine. Like, I'm not asking you to outwit Spoelstra. I'm asking you to be one step below him, because in 2 or 3 years, I think you'll be ready to outwit the dude. I also think as well, like, coaching staffs matter in these type of instances, right? Like, if you get out coached in game 1 or game 2, having a good coaching staff that really know their ball and that are going to hold you accountable, they're the ones that are going to be able to come up with counters as well. And I think that Ime is one of these guys that's going to listen to the collective, whereas other coaches might be like, yeah, thanks for your input, but I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Ime seems to be very more, he may listen, he may not. I think Ime will listen.
The dad jokes are back from Adam.
I'm bringing it back. But no, man, like, I'm just saying that, I feel like this entire playoff run is just putting Ime on the map as like one of the better young coaches in the league. And this is 2 coaches in 2 now that have come in and had some early success with the team. But I'm excited, man. It's midnight and I just want to go and watch more basketball.
Oh man, well, I'm excited for the series. I mean, I think you said it before, and I think this is probably a good place for us to start bringing the pod to, so that Adam can get to bed before he falls asleep face first into his mic here while we're podding. I think this is going to be another tough, grueling series. So I think we're at that point. We got to make some predictions, boys. Today's been great. Game 7, best 2 words in sports. It's been a hell of a day. It's been a blast. Grant was amazing. Today was awesome. But sadly, very quickly, we and the Boston Celtics have to move on. Because Tuesday night is game 1. Very quick turnaround. Right back at it. Eastern Conference Finals. So, Greg, let's go with you. Then we'll go to Adam, and then I'll wrap it up here with my prediction. Greg, what is your prediction for this series?
Man, Celtics in 6. I think it's going to be really hard to win on the road in a game 7. So I think we need to take care of business. I don't think we win game 1, although the Celtics have been surprising me all season long with how gritty and resilient they are. I just think that turnaround from this game 7 into a game 1 with 1 day's rest and 1 day of preparation, it's a lot to ask of the guys. We need to get that split. We need to get split in the first 2 games. And then I think the Celtics, once they crack the code, whatever needs to be cracked, I think the talent disparity and just overall, I think that the team is just better than every other team that I've seen this year. I've watched a lot of basketball this year, and the only other team in the whole league that I've been worried about is the Phoenix Suns. And everybody else, I'm like, okay, yeah, they have this guy, they have that guy, but I still think our team is better. So I think the Celtics win this in 6.
I think that Marcus Smart is still icing his groin after that Giannis knee on Tuesday. So
I'd be icing it until game time on Tuesday.
Dude, I'll be icing it until I'm 50. Like, that was a brutal knee. So I agree with Greg. I see Boston dropping game 1, but I still think Boston do it in 6 or 7. I do think this has the potential to be a 7-game series. I also think it has the potential to be a quick over and done, like Thunderbirds are go type of thing. But I'm gonna go Boston in 6. I think that I think they drop the first one. I think they win the second. I think they win the third, drop the fourth, and then I think they win consecutive games to close it out.
Okay. I'm very much in line with what y'all are saying. I think it's imperative to split. I'm going to go with Celtics in 6 for the reason Greg talked about. That game 7 at home, we saw it did matter today. Both teams in the series against the Bucks, had won multiple games on the road. But at the end of the day, having that crowd when you're making those runs, that does matter in a game 7. You start to get those thoughts in the back of your mind that maybe you can put out of the way in games 3 or 4 or game 5 when there's another day to live, there's another game to play. When there's just nothing else and no one's on your side and everyone is rooting against you, that is going to play some type of factor. The one thing that I'll predict, it's a little different. I'll zag from you guys here. Is I think I mentioned this earlier. Sometimes with the play in, you get a little bit of momentum, even though you've played more games, but you have that momentum that you're still feeding off that energy. And with the quick turnaround, you don't really have time to think about it. So I do think, in my mind, I think the Celtics are going to take the momentum, of today, the continuity, the way that they're playing from today, steamroll that directly down to South Beach, take game 1. And then I think game 2, you're going to see a little bit of a letdown in the sense that they just need a breather. Like they're going to, I don't say let their guard down, but it's just going to be time where it's been so one day after another that I think it's going to catch up with them by game 2. But I think game 1, they're going to be living off that high coming from game 7, that they're going to take that momentum, steal game 1, because that's, like I said, that has to be imperative. If they lose both games in Miami, I do start to get pretty worried about this series, even though, we're still going to have 2 more home games coming up after that. If they were to lose both in Miami, then you really got to start thinking about winning 4 out of 5 from a team that's gritty as hell. That's going to be in your grill just the same way we are. We talked about how when the Celtics get a lead, teams struggle to fight back. I think you could say the same thing about Miami, because that defense is going to be up there with Bam and Jimmy at the head of that snake. Like, that's something you don't want to have to deal with when you're, trying to survive 4 out of 5 in a row. So you got to get one of these 2 in Miami. I'm going to say they get game 1, let down in game 2, and then we come back to Boston all tied up at 1. But Celtics in 6 is my ultimate prediction.
All I know is I really wish we had the rights to play Will Smith's song right now.
Getting jiggy with it?
I'm going to Miami.
I blew that one.
Well, I think that's enough for us, man.
I'm like I said,
I'm so disappointed in you right now.
I'm still thinking about game 7. I'm still in the post game 7 getting jiggy with it vibe. We're going to Miami. I'm not on the plane yet. I'm still in the locker room.
Will. Oh my God, bro. The fact that you're able to like look at yourself right now is amazing. That's the difference between me and you. If I had flubbed that the way that you just flubbed that, I would have went off camera and left the pod. You're just smiling through it, and that's why I love you, man. You're able to get brilliant water off a duck's back, man. That's what you are.
Right, everyone, if you've enjoyed the show, we'll be back again on Wednesday. If you like these live streams, we live stream during recording, so that'll be on Tuesday afternoon Eastern time. Until then, everybody make sure if you've been drinking lots, go get some water. If you haven't been drinking lots, then you're going to be able to sleep okay. I haven't been drinking, but I'm going to struggle. My adrenaline is pumping. I don't know what to say, dude. I'm literally operating on adrenaline right now. Everybody go follow the show. As usual, please share, whether that be on Twitter, on Facebook, on Reddit, on Instagram. Share it, tag us, and we'll share it too. It's better when you share it than we do, because that's what we're meant to do. And when you share it, it's because you want to do it. That means a lot more. Until then, you can catch this podcast over on Celtics blog, Apple. Go to Apple, go to Spotify, wherever, type in Celtics blog, it'll be there. This is a crossover episode, so make sure you go check this out. If you want to listen to it twice, go over and go to the 617 podcast to listen to it on Will and Greg's feed. They do some dope work over there, and we will be back later in the week. Thank you very much for joining in. If you've watched us live, you've been a wonderful, wonderful audience. Not that, I've never said that before, but it was funny. Peace.